Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to be a continuation of a previous lesson from the 24th chapter in the book of Job. We made it all the way up until the first 17 verses. We're going to take this one from verse 18 all the way home to 25, the sixth verse. Bildad, the Shuhite, second speech in the second round is short, sweet, and to the point. We're going to combine the two. What we covered in 24th chapter is connected to, it is part of Job's eighth speech. This is the eighth time we hear from him, and we're going to hear from him again after Bildad's brief six-verse testimony. We don't end up hearing from Zophar the third, the junior most member of his comforters, who are engaged in the rounds in the exchange of monologues. But in the first 18 verses, first off, there is a distinct difference worth noting of the 23rd chapter and the 24th. The 23rd is where Job begins his eighth speech, and this is in response to Eliphaz the Temanite, and the plurality of the pronoun that he uses is I. The declension changes in 24. He speaks of they, and he's giving his ballad of the wicked. He's saying things that he has seen and observed of the wicked. His friends are prone to give ballads of the wicked where it does not end well for them. But what Job observes is that the wickedness, the question that theodicy asks, and that is the genre that Job belongs to, is why do the righteous suffer? And Job sort of flips and reverses this question by asking why do the wicked not suffer immediate retribution for them, and why is their misery inflicted on innocent people? So times are not hidden from El Shaddai, and why have not those who known them seen his days? Another way of saying that is, why do the wicked get away? Why are they prospering in the world? Job's focus and concentration is on the here and now because he is in the midst of pain. He has skin boils head to toe, and he just lost everything. Health, wealth, family, he lost it all, and he wanted to know, why does this not happen? Why are the wicked still flourishing when this happened to me? They remove landmarks, they rob and feed on flocks, they drive away the donkey of the fatherless, they like the widow's ox as a pledge, they turn the needy out of the way, and the poor of the earth have hidden together. So because they do all these things, they steal property of neighbors. That's what removing the landmark would have been. It would have been a serious criminal offense in the land of the Mosaic law, as described in Deuteronomy 29. The ancients were in the practice, most properties did not have walls, so they were in the practice of observing where one's territory was, and to encroach or advance beyond and above that line would have been the crime of all crimes. And just to take that which doesn't belong to you, that is the same thing as removing the landmark. You are still stealing when you are robbing flocks that don't belong to you. And you have a sadistic streak because you seem to go after the orphans and the widows, the most vulnerable ones, the ones who are without. They are bereft of a male protector. These are the most vulnerable of societies. In the law of Moses, first off, Job is living in a pre-law period, the patriarchal era. But much of the wisdom is reflected in the writings of Job that we witness, such as in Deuteronomy. It indicates Yahweh's special concern for affectionate investment for the welfare of the most vulnerable of society. And if Hebrew society had the same concern, there wouldn't have been so much destitution. But just the wicked people that here are describing are those who get what they have by the backs of others. They steal from people, they profit from the earth, and they don't even have a concern. They're only looking out for number one. They are here to get and to take, and they don't care who they take from or how miserable they are degraded as a result of their rapacious quest for riches. And then what happens to those that are oppressed and afflicted? They reap his fodder in a field, and they glean his vineyard of the wicked. Vineyard and the wicked belongs to the wicked. That's where the wicked must reap and glean and sow in their own field. They spend the night naked, without a garment and without covering in the cold. So because the rapacious rich really took advantage of them, they were reduced to having a sheer garment, a thin garment to cover themselves under the coldness of night. They would have frozen to death if not for, they had no one to blame but the wicked. They were responsible. They snatch away the fatherless from the breast and take the pledge from the poor. Naked they shall go about without a garment, and hungry they shall take away sheaves. There they are again, targeting and preying on the fatherless, the orphans, those who are bereft of a fatherly figure to protect them. So to steal from them, to just take for anything from them, to take their property because their father is not alive to claim it and protect it would have been a crime against crime and a sin of all sins. And to take a pledge, so that would have left the poor with nothing, because the haves and the have-nots, if you were taken to and sued for your garment, then you had to give it up in court and you would have spent the night naked. But remember, they're in a pre-law time naked, and they shall... So this is just the way that it was. Verse 13, they have become rebels against the light and have not known his ways, nor remain in his path. They are this way by their own deliberate initiative and decision. They want to be this way. They are willfully wayward. They are willfully rebellious. They are willfully disobedient. It's all a matter of will. So we do not have a choice. We cannot argue that we did not have a choice or a say in the matter. And the light separates the wise from the weak. The weak see it and are blinded by its luminosity, whereas the wise are guided by it. They are not blinded by the overwhelming actuality of the facts of the truth. And we have the light provides the perspective that enables us to see the path, watch out for the detours without being distracted, without being hindered in the journey that we are in. We are walking a way, and it is also a path with an intended destination. Verse 16, in the dark he has broken into houses. By day they shut themselves up. They have not known light. So the other attraction of the, or lack thereof, of the wicked in the a light is the fact of criminal activity, which was prolific in the ancient world. Remember, I said Job describes the sins of the country, removing the barrier between a neighbor and taking that which doesn't belong to you, driving all the fatherless off their lands, all the widows, just swallowing up their land whole. Now he moves on to the city and the things that he says here is murdering and adultery. Adultery, obviously, if the object of murder and adultery, object of any crime, is to get away with it, then you're not going to broadcast your transgression in broad daylight. You're going to wait for the cloak of and cover of darkness to get away with it is what you want to do. And if you want to break into houses, the best time to do that is at night when you don't have the light shining on you. For all the morning is the same as the shadow of death, when he discerns the extreme fears of the shadows of death. So the wicked do not have a lot to look forward to. They have the fact of life, the shadow of death, which is ever hanging over them, is a source of constant anxiety and extreme fear. So the fear is part of the sin nature, and to be governed by irrational fears is a consequence of being fallen. Not beyond redemption, but seriously stuck in a reprobate mind. Verse 18, we're going to take this into finish the 25th chapter. It's 6 short verses. It's Bildad, the Shuhite's third and final ballad. Then we hear from Job for a while. Then we meet a younger man, Elihu. Then we hear from Yahweh himself, the long petition. Thus, Job's prayers are answered. He is swift on the face of the waters. Their portion is cursed in the earth. He does not turn into the way of vineyards. So Job, there is no clear indication. Now, this is not textually consistent with the previous paragraph, the book of Job, and the Bible itself is arranged into paragraphs. That is the original literary division. And what he's describing could be interpreted as something of sarcasm, because he's quoting or paraphrasing or referencing some of their lines of argument in a sarcastic lens, just saying that these people are getting away with murder, and yet they are cursed. They are living in large, and they are loving it. They are going unpunished. There is no immediate retribution. They are prosperous in the ways, and they are dominant on the food chain in human society. So the wicked, why is the day not come yet? And living with patience, waiting on his perfect vengeance and his perfect judgment is part of what it means to live by faith. Drought and heat snatch away snow waters, the grave sinners. Sin is likened to heat, and if you die in your sin, you will land in hell, and it is hot and it is real. And drought, if you starve yourselves of spiritual resources, if you do not deign to appetize yourself and indulge on the treasures of heaven while you're on earth, then hell will be a better place for you than have hell. So we each choose our outcome by the outlooks we choose, or we determine our comes by the outlooks we choose. The womb forgets him, the worm feeds sweetly on him. He is remembered no more, and wickedness is broken like a tree. So it does not end well for the wicked. Job is saying much the same thing that his three comforters have already said, that they will be broken irrevocably. They'll have no children. They'll have no property. They'll have no possessions. They'll have nothing. They'll have this. They'll be reduced to beggarless. Beggars without food on the back of their clothes, and they will be worm food when they are gone. And wickedness does not pay a price. It does not build a legacy that lasts. It is you become the worm food you are. You contributed nothing in the cosmic equilibrium between good and evil while you are here. Is treating evil the barren who does not bear and does no good for the widow. So the curse of all curses in the ancient world would have been to be barren, to not have children, to perpetuate your legacy. Humanity has a thirst for immortality, and one of the ways we satisfy that thirst is by procreating, to have children, to perpetuate the life that we gave them. The human life is a torch that we have passed through procreation, and to not have children would have been a curse of all curse in the ancient world. This was true in Abraham's day and Sarah, so that would have been an embarrassment and a suffer and reproach, and it would have been for Samson's mother as well as Elizabeth, Zachariah's elderly wife, who was well past childbearing age so from Scripture we do see that we just discussed. He draws mightily away his power. He rises up, and no one is certain of life. To be uncertain of life is now living life with certainty does not mean that we know every detail, everything that's going to pass, everything that's going to unfold our way. We do not live in the future, therefore we do not know the future. Before all we know is the present, but we do have prophecies which can guide us to the future which awaits us. But certainty, the author of Hebrews defines faith as that hope in which we have not seen, and of the certainties of the things to come. So certain is an element of faith, but we don't want to claim a presumptuous or excessive certainty, because to live with faith means to live without total knowledge. We have no we cannot prove in a court of law that God exists or that anything else, but we do have faith that his power is greater than any enemy, obstacle, or inequality on the earth, and that his justice is waiting, his vengeance is waiting. And I've heard it said now, to answer the critic's question of why, if God is so good, why is evil present on the earth? And I can borrow this from Lee Strobel, the author of Case for Christ, one of the distinguished men that he interviews in the book answers it thus: that argument is similar to reading a novel and criticizing the author before the plot fully unfolds. He gives him safety, and he leans on it, and yet his eyes are on their ways. He is the all-seeing, all-knowing eye in the sky. We cannot escape him. We can run, but we cannot hide. We cannot run very far. We cannot hide for even a split second. Whether we go to heaven, he is there. If we sink to Sheol, he is there, to appropriate the Psalmist 139th one when he's commenting on the omnipresence. So the attribute of omnipresence is the ability to be everywhere and every time at once. We don't want to get in that direction, but he sees all, he knows the secrets, everything we've forgotten. How many sins have we committed that we forget, but he remembers them all. Now, when we read the word that he forgets our sins, that does not degrade or diminish his attribute of omniscience, which is knowing, perfect and total knowledge. It is only to say that he casts them away and treats them as if they never happened. They are lifted up for a little while, then they are gone, and they shall be brought low. Like all they are gathered up, and they are cut off like the heads of grain. Now Job is starting to speak sense, something that is not sarcastic, and something that is completely aligned with the way it is, or way it will be. Now, the way it will be is not necessarily identical to the way it is now. There is a dichotomy between the execution of heavenly justice and earthly. On the earth, injustice reigns supreme. Our justice systems in any country on earth is an oxymoron. Injustice flourishes because the justice system is not what it says it is in most places in the world. But the point of the passage is that one of the points, I could have taken this in any number of ways, but is that the pleasure and the victories of the wicked are ephemeral, they are temporary, they are a vanish, they are a vapor, they are here one day, then they are gone forever. So their joy is short-lived. The path of wickedness and the fruits thereof are not an investment that pays dividends. So stay away from the path of wickedness. And if you exalt yourself, then you're going to be brought low. Read that in the New Testament, and you're going to be gathered up and cut off. That is not a pleasant imagery of what to expect for the wicked. So you reduce yourself to something that is designed to be and destined to be cut off as if it were grain, for not taking your eternal potentiality seriously. And if it is not so, who proves me a liar and makes my words worthless? Strong words from a weak man. Job is saying this in the state of weakness, but he does have a point. He is in a war of wits, first off, between his friends, and his friends are eloquent and persuasive, but much of what they say is true in principle, but not absolutely binding in every way in situation. They are not giving him the answers he seeks. They are not satisfying his quest for answers. But he says something like, you can bet your bottom dollar that what I'm saying is true. This is neither the first nor perhaps the last time in which this braggadocio, witticism is displayed. 25th chapter, first verse, this is Bildad the Shuhite. He is the middle companions. He is the second one who is presented in the order in the second chapter, 11th verse, and we hear from him in the 8th chapter, and also somewhere in the teens. The 18th, I think, is his second one. This is his third and final one. And what we've heard from him before is a lot more elaborate, but this is short, sweet, to the point. It can be dissected systematically. He makes two important claims. One is on the justice and the mightiness and the consequent inferiority of man, the nothingness, the chasm, the abyss, the qualitative abyss which exists between us and him. And this point is established fully and forcefully, especially in the 38th chapter in the book of Job. And Bildad the Shuhite answered and said, rule and reverence belong to him, making peace in high places. He is the sovereign king. What he wills, he wishes, and what he wishes is, what he wills will come to pass. So he is completely sovereign. He is completely omnipotent, and so these two things, rule and fear, can only belong to such a one who is uniquely endowed with the attributes and the fullness and the infinitude and the preeminence and the transcendence and everything else that he has. These are his claims. These are his tools because they are his to claim. They belong to him. They are his personal property possession. They emanate from him. They are an attribute. Now that term attribute is qualitatively distinct from the term characteristics. We describe human beings in terms of characteristics. When we speak of divinity, we think of attributes. These are things that can be attributed to him. So the power of peace is in his hand, and sometimes he accomplishes peace through the waging of war. He is the prince, he is the Elohim of peace and not of confusion. We read of in 1 Corinthians 14:33. But sometimes he wages war to make peace, such as, for instance, when his son returns on the horse that is white, waving a sword in hand, violently eliminating the presence of evil through evil people who remain on the earth. And that is how the millennial kingdom is established. Is there any number to his armies, and on whom does his light not rise? So given the fact of his, just the infinitude of the number of angels that are at his disposal in his legion, so from this singular entity just emanates all these powerful pluralities. So he has an army of angels, and they are at his beck and call. And on whom does his light not rise? Now his light is all or it is nothing. It either shines and everyone has a glimpse and a witness of him working in his existence, but sadly some willfully, deliberately, they prefer the darkness, much in the same way that the criminal prefers to operate under the cloak and cover of darkness. So how can man be righteous before Al, or how can he be flawless who is born of a woman? So this separates the division of the systematic presentation. He makes 2 points. He comments on the omnipotent sovereignty of the Almighty, and then he condescends by contrast to man, who is as nothing towards him, worm, creature of the dust, and just in and of himself, and apart from the one who made it, completely worthless as to provide any satisfaction or approve or merit any approval from the one who made us. So because we are born of a woman, because we are human, we have human nature, we have human genetics, and with that comes human nature. We are deceitful and desperately wicked. Universal depravity is a fact of life. Even the born-again sin, universal sin, is one of the facts we must contend with. But the main sinner we need to play focus on us. It's not everyone else around us, but always and first the one in the mirror. See, even the moon does not shine, and the stars have not been flawless in his eyes. So the stars, which are exponentially beyond us, greater in size and in significance and luminosity and everything else, physically more powerful than we are, certainly, they are not flawless. They are limited in how far their light shines. How many planets orbit around its gravity. Yahweh is the centrifugal, spiritual, invisible creator of the visible, who makes it all happen and makes it all possible. The moon and the stars and the sun shine their light, which comes from him. He gave them. He created the light, and he created the moons, and he did the light on the first day of creation, and the moon and sun on the fourth, and the stars and skies one of the other days. So even these things that are above and beyond ourselves. Now first off, Job and his comforters were not Hebrews. They were Hebrews by belief, but background, not blood. But they were distinct from their neighboring nations, in that the worship of stars and celestial bodies was rampant among the ancient Near East. But the Hebrews, or Job and his 3 friends, they were Edomites, so they may have been not far removed away from the true religion, which would have been there through Esau. How much less a man, a maggot, and a son of man, a worm. So even though we prefer the positive depiction of ourselves as the crown glory of all creation, we have the image, and who is man that we have been given dominion, Psalm 8. He really degrades us to this this state of abject humiliation, a maggot and a worm. These are the worst, lowest, vilest life forms, and such are we to him. But from a certain standpoint, we are as nothing. We are as insignificant, far less significant or necessary to our existence as a maggot is and a worm to our existence. So we are truly, truly nothing when we compare ourselves to the one who is our everything. And if he is not your everything, then you're missing out on everything. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Stay tuned until next time. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.